Hello, sports fans, and welcome to Let Me Speak, the show that shares sports' biggest headlines explained, uninterrupted, and maybe a little audacious. I'm Joe Braverman, and today's topics we'll be discussing are the state of the NFL after Week 12 and making picks for Week 13. Plus, breaking down a hectic week of college football news ahead of Conference Championship Saturday. And analyzing the biggest deals during MLB free agency before the lockout. It's episode 50 of Let Me Speak, and it starts right now. Hey everybody, here on Thursday, December 2nd, 2021, the 50th, can you believe it, 50 episodes of Let Me Speak. Thank you everyone, I say it over and over again, week after week, for all of you listening, watching. I fully appreciate your support. I absolutely love making this podcast, love talking sports, and we'll be talking sports with a special guest when we make our picks for the NFL, but I gotta say, since Thanksgiving, which, by the way, I hope everyone had a very happy and healthy Thanksgiving holiday, it's been nonstop news, let me tell you, from college football, the NBA, the MLB lockout. Like, it's been all over the place. But I figure we start with what's going on right now, and that's in the NFL on the field. 6 weeks left into the regular season, and now playoff talk is getting more and more crucial. The hype is really there. And a couple of games last week in Week 12 really stood out to me. And I think the first one obviously had to be the Bucs and the Colts. Tampa Bay beating Indianapolis 38-31. And I got to say, watching it and watching some of the highlights, it was sloppy. It was high scoring, but it definitely was exciting. And Tom Brady beats Indianapolis yet again. Now, to start on the Indy side of things, I thought going into this game, this was a really good team, especially after their win in Buffalo. I thought Jonathan Taylor was basically the best running back in football with the absence of Derrick Henry. But the problem with the Colts are the Colts themselves. They can't get out of their own way. They had 5 turnovers against Tampa. And while the Tampa defense, which we'll talk about very shortly, is maybe not an elite defense, they still can make you pay for your mistakes. So 5 turnovers doesn't win any kind of game, especially for Indianapolis. I thought, looking at the stat line, Jonathan Taylor needed to get involved a little bit more. He needed more touches, more actions. He only caught 4 balls for 14 yards, and he ran the ball 16 times for 83. So I think Indianapolis, Carson Wentz isn't an elite quarterback, but if you've got a guy like Jonathan Taylor, that's going to be your offense right then and there. You got to get him involved a lot more. And if they want to get to the playoffs, because right now they're sitting at 6-6 and they're on the outside looking in, they're still a good team in my eyes, but they just have to limit those mistakes. And it starts with Carson Wentz at the quarterback position. Okay. 300 yards passing, 3 touchdowns are great, but 2 interceptions is not going to make it happen for this Indy team. Now, defensively, they're not what they were a year ago, and what I think essentially carried them into the postseason, but it's all about just limiting those mistakes. And that's what Indianapolis has to do, because Carson Wentz, we've seen when he's on his 2 feet and he's healthy, he can be a good quarterback, maybe not an MVP candidate from his time with Philly, but he can still be a capable quarterback to get Indianapolis into the postseason. Do I think they can go a long way if they get into the postseason? Probably not. But still, with the kind of schedule that they have, they should be winning some of these games. And the fact that they even kept it close with Tom Brady and the Buccaneers says to me that Indianapolis can be a team when they don't get in their own way, essentially, is like what I'm trying to get at, is that more action for Jonathan Taylor and limiting the mistakes. That's what gets Indy to go further in a wide open AFC. But on the other side of the ball, Tampa Bay, I think their defense, their special teams is a little suspect. I mean, they allowed almost 400 yards. There was the kick return near the end after they had the go-ahead touchdown. The rush defense, looking at the numbers, they're tops in the NFL. So they're good at stopping the run, and they did a good job of limiting Taylor. But their pass defense is 20th in the league, 20th. And their corners, I understand they've been hurt. It's a lot of in and outs. But that pass defense is really something to watch out for. Because if you got guys like Carson Wentz putting 300 yards on you, how are you going to do against the Aaron Rodgers or the Lamar Jacksons or the Josh Allens of the NFL? Because offensively, they're not a problem. They're not a problem. Similar to Indianapolis, their quarterback is making mistakes. Tom Brady's thrown at least one pick in 4 straight games, and which is hard to believe considering all the weapons he's got. Mike Evans is still there. Rob Gronkowski is healthy. Leonard Fournette put up 4 touchdowns last week. Okay, so he's thankful to have all of those options, but obviously he doesn't have Antonio Brown. Even so, it's a fairly easy schedule. So I don't think, it's nothing to really freak out about if you're a Tampa fan, but you have to look at the schedule also fairly easily. Their last 6 games: at Falcons, versus Bills, versus Saints, at Panthers, at Jets, versus Panthers. So they could go 5-1 essentially in that stretch of games. And with the NFC the way it is, you got to win those games. You got to win those games with Green Bay still succeeding. Arizona's getting healthier. Who knows if the Rams might turn it around? It's still very wide open. So Tampa's got to win these games. They've got to win these games. Tom Brady has to limit his mistakes, which I think he can, because he's 44 and he's won 7 Super Bowls. I think he can right the ship. And the pass defense just has to be better. They've got to be better, especially at the cornerback position. We'll see what happens there for Tampa's upcoming slate of games. But speaking of the Packers, I think that was another game that stood out to me, was beating the Rams 36-28. I think they're cementing their spot as an NFC favorite. In the AFC, it's really wide open, but if in the NFC, I look at really 2 teams right now. I look at the Cardinals, and after last week, I look at the Packers, because they were at Lambeau. They forced 3 turnovers against the Rams. And I think Green Bay is a Super Bowl team. I think they are a Super Bowl team, despite not having Aaron Jones. I know he was a little limited against LA last week, but he's going to be healthy. Defensively, the Packers look great. Aaron Rodgers, despite the toe injury, he's playing great. And I think for right now, I could see them as a Super Bowl team. Absolutely. But on the other side, for LA, they're beating themselves. Similar to Indianapolis, they're beating themselves. They're now on a 3-game losing streak after going 7-1. As I said, 3 turnovers. And Matt Stafford's got to stop thinking it's Detroit. Okay, this isn't the Detroit Lions. He's thrown 5 picks in the last 3 games. This is something we're not used to. Well, maybe we are, but not in LA. There's a reason why LA is going all in, why they locked up Jalen Ramsey, why they got Von Miller, why they picked up Odell Beckham, is not for games like this, okay? Because you've got guys like Devontae Adams and Deebo Samuel lighting up Jalen Ramsey. You got this defense allowing almost 400 yards to Green Bay. And I think the problem is just that they're too one-dimensional. I understand it's a pass-heavy offense, but the load can't all be on Matthew Stafford. There's got to be more options and more touches for Darrell Henderson Jr., for Sony Michel. They've got to get a run game going if LA wants to get in that upper echelon. Do I think they can still make the playoffs? Absolutely. It's going to have to be a wild card, though. I don't think they catch Arizona. Arizona's getting very healthy. And if LA does not fix all the problems that they have, Matt Stafford throwing interceptions, not having a run game, and defensively, they're not shutting teams down, then there's no chance for Sean McVay and this crew to take that extra step and to be in the Super Bowl, which I predicted at first. I thought they would get into the Super Bowl. But the way this team is playing with Matthew Stafford, all of his turnovers, again, it's just with all these weapons, it's surprising. I understand the schedule's been kind of tough, obviously in Green Bay, and then Tennessee and San Francisco has been their 3 losses in a row. But I think this is a team that has Super Bowl potential if they get it all together. So Matthew Stafford is just going to have to limit his mistakes and put everything he's done with Detroit in the past. And who knows, maybe that involves putting Van Jefferson more in the game or giving more touches to the running backs. We'll have to see what happens for LA, because I'm still holding out hope that they can turn this thing around. But a team I'm not holding out hope for is Seattle. I think the Monday night game was the last game during week 12 that stood out to me. And that was the Washington football team keeping their hopes alive while crushing Seattle's, winning 17-15. Now, Washington is a very underrated team, and you have to look in the standings. They're slowly creeping up on Dallas. If the Cowboys continue to falter a little bit, Washington's going to be right there, okay? And this isn't a sexy team, okay? They just know how to get the job done. Look at last Monday night. They held the ball for over 41 minutes. They had over 370 yards of offense. Taylor Heineke, as I said, he's a folk hero for Washington right now. And the way that offense works, with Antonio Gibson getting over 100 yards on nearly 30 carries, getting a good offense going. Logan Thomas is healthy. Terry McLaurin's getting involved. Curtis Samuel's back from injury. This is a Washington team, if they get into the playoffs, can be a spoiler. I think they can be a spoiler, especially looking at the wild card sorts of things. You have a bunch of teams, San Francisco, Minnesota, Washington. They're all jockeying for that that wild card spot. So if they get in, they can make some noise. But obviously the headline has to be about the Seahawks, okay? This era for Seattle is over. It's essentially over. I mean, the two biggest problems they have right now, running the ball and defense, okay? You know how many yards they had against Washington? 34. You know who was the leading rusher? Russell Wilson. You know what his stat line was? 2 carries, 16 yards. 16 yards was your leading rusher, okay? This is the worst defense in football statistically. They allow almost 400 yards per game. And obviously, it's about Russell Wilson. I mean, he just doesn't look himself, which is, it could be the finger injury. It could just be he's not motivated anymore. But the personnel in Seattle and around Seattle is not what it used to be. There's no Marshawn Lynch. There's no Legion of Boom. Pete Carroll can do all he can at the head coaching spot, but this team just cannot turn it around. And I think it's going to have to be a whole rebuild for Seattle come season's end. And that might involve maybe getting another quarterback out there. I don't know if Russell Wilson, he has said, these are my trade options. Do with it what you will. I don't know if Wilson might be a little more extra motivated to get out of Seattle, because he doesn't have that many years left. He's in his early 30s, so he's probably got maybe 5 years left, maybe a little bit more before, it's time for him to hang up the cleats. But I just think Seattle is a total mess right now. Their dynasty is over. It ended in the postseason last year when they got beat by the Rams. So I think Seattle is something to really watch for, not necessarily on the field, but come the offseason. Maybe Pete Carroll retires. Russell Wilson gets more demanding about his trade. But for the time being, rushing and defense, those are the two biggest things Seattle has to fix. I don't know if they can fix it, though, because they don't have the personnel. But who knows if week 13 will be a turnaround for them. But speaking of week 13, let's now throw it over to a segment we recorded earlier in the day, where we have a special guest pick our slate of games. Ladies and gentlemen, this is NFL Week 13 edition of Pick'em. So it's time once again for our NFL Pick'em segment, and we've got another special guest joining us. We got a fellow T-Hawk from T-Hawk Nation. She's also the owner of Modern Nature Hair, Skin, and Wellness. Alexandra Shaffer joins us on the show. Alex, thanks for taking the time for recording this.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited.
Okay, so before we get into the NFL picks, let's talk about this business. This is essentially a startup business that you've started while you were at the University of Vermont. Now you're at the University of Illinois doing some grad work. How'd you get started in the business of hair and skincare wellness products?
Yeah, it's a super funny story. I was definitely like a quarantine decision, but My mom told me, she was like, she would do anything for me to like have taken better care of myself before I started the business. Like she would bring me to get my hair done and I would like refuse to go more than once a year. I used like one skincare item, maybe like it was a good day if I did. And as soon as quarantine hit, I lost my job as a server after I graduated from University of Vermont. I took a gap year, was serving at a restaurant, and lost my job. Was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Was just hanging out, doing nothing. And I really just needed something to do. So a friend approached me about the opportunity and she was like, hey, like you can start this business. This is how it works. And I said, okay, great. Like sign me up. Let's get this done. Thinking that I'd maybe do it just for a few months, like wouldn't be super into it. But I absolutely love doing it. I get to help people with their hair, their skincare, their wellness, building confidence, making income from their homes. And it's a lot of fun, especially since I'm in veterinary school at University of Illinois. It is, which is very stressful. It's kind of a good thing for me to like have on the side to get away from school sometimes.
Yeah, I would agree with this podcast is essentially a quarantine idea too. Started out something small and all of a sudden, boom, we're on episode 50. You're on episode 50. And it's been an absolute best. Talk about some of the products that you have. Obviously, we'll promote some of the products at the end of the show and where they can find you. But what are some of the products that your business and your company promotes?
Yeah, absolutely. So specifically, we are vegan, cruelty-free. We're Leaping Bunny certified, which is like absolutely no animals in any part of the process. It's anti-aging and damage reversing hair and skincare. So basically, you start with a shampoo, conditioner, and maybe a treatment product. We have a lot of products that help people regrow their hair after hair loss. Or after balding, which is absolutely amazing. There are certain natural compounds that can be found on the earth that will do that. And we've found those and we've incorporated them into a lot of our products, as well as all of our skincare is vegan, cruelty-free. It's all naturally based. That also, I've seen some amazing skincare transformations. I've had one myself. I had really bad mask acne and was able to get rid of it using these products. We're always coming out with new things. We're always expanding, which is amazing. The health and beauty industry is huge and just constantly growing. We also have wellness products like we have greens, we have collagen that's vegan, which is really cool because collagen is usually animal parts and not vegan. And so, yeah, that's just a few of the things, just kind of broad category of what we have.
It's definitely a lot of great products. I've been able to follow you on Instagram. You've got some really great products, and plus you're an animal lover, so it's very important to you that it's all vegan based. Is that correct?
It is, yes. I mean, there are certain things that I believe animals should be used in research for and can be used in research for, which we won't get into that. It's definitely a controversial topic, but the beauty industry should not be one of those things. So it has made me I've just been so happy to have found a company that really aligns with my values in terms of that and giving back to the community. So
yeah, definitely great to give back. So let's get right into these picks. Before we get into, let's look at our standings, where we are. Our good friend, also a fellow Team Hawk, Johnny Mansaritas, had our first appearance. 13-3 is what we're shooting for. We've got Ben May right behind him at 10-3. A lot of 500 records so far in the past couple of weeks, but we'll see what you can do, Alex. You ready to start?
Sure. Let's do it.
I know you had talked about your boyfriend was going to help you out, but he didn't really help you out. So this is all on a limb.
Yeah, I kind of completely forgot to ask. So we're here. We have no idea what we're doing.
I've seen you at a couple sporting events. You were diehard Teok Nation, so you know a little thing or two.
Just like a few. Just a
few So we'll start it off with the game tonight, Thursday Night Football between the Dallas Cowboys, New Orleans Saints. Dallas at 7-4, getting Amari Cooper back. Meanwhile, the Saints 5-6. They got a new quarterback at the helm. Taysom Hill will start Thursday night, Alex, between Dallas at 7-4, New Orleans at 5-6. What do you think?
I'm going to have to go with the Saints. I'm going to go with them.
All right, that's a good pick. I mean, it's going to be tough for New Orleans because Alvin Kamara is missing again, but Mark Ingram will be back, so it's going to be a tough matchup. I hate to disagree with you, but I think Dallas is almost at full strength. They don't have their head coach because he tested positive for COVID, so I could see where the pick might go to New Orleans, but I think for this week it's going to be Dallas. I think offensively they're at full strength, but who knows? Saints could pull off an upset. That Superdome gets loud, so could be a home field advantage for the Saints on that one. As we now move on to the NFC South, Tampa Bay at 8-3, Atlanta 5-6. Tom Brady, former Patriot, just squeaking out a high-scoring win last week against Indianapolis. Meanwhile, the Falcons still trying to keep their season alive. What do you think between Tampa Bay and Atlanta?
Oh, 100% Bucks.
100%. All right. I think it's 100% too. I think Tampa Bay is just too outmatched for Atlanta. Plus, we're from New England. We got to stick with Tom Brady and all those guys, former Patriots. We move on now to Arizona 9-2, Chicago 4-7. Cardinals coming off a bye. We still don't know if Kyler Murray will be back, if DeAndre Hopkins will be back, but they go 2 to Chicago to Soldier Field. I see the orange eye right there. You're a resident of Illinois right now. Are you going to root for the hometown Bears?
Unfortunately, no, not in this situation. The record, clearly the game records are speaking for themselves.
Well, of course, you've probably, being at the University of Illinois, you've run into a lot of Bears fans. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. A lot of my friends are fans.
So let's hope none of them listen to this episode and watch us both pick Arizona at 9-2. They're getting healthier and healthier. I think this should be an easy one for the Cardinals. As we go on to the Chargers and the Bengals, Chargers at 6-5, coming off a tough loss. They're still contending for a playoff spot. Meanwhile, Cincinnati 7-4. Bengals looking good atop that AFC North, still chasing the Ravens. What do you think? I mean, the Bengals wear orange. Are you going to ride with them?
Yeah. Also, they're Tigers, right?
Bengals are Tigers, essentially.
There you go. I'm going to have to go with that one.
Of course. Fellow Tigers, they wear orange. This is going to be really close. It's hard to decide Cincinnati, whether they're good or bad, because they're so inconsistent. But I think for this week at home is a big advantage for Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, those guys. Plus, defensively, they're getting better and better. I like the Bengals to keep going. I agree with you there. As now we go to a matchup in the NFC North, the Minnesota Vikings, the Detroit Lions. This one, we'll see how far of a leap you take. Detroit 0-10-1. They are winless on the year. Here comes Minnesota at 5-6. Are you going to make the call that Detroit wins their first game of the year?
I don't think so. I'm gonna go with the Vikings on this one. I feel like Detroit Lions have always just had it rough.
Yeah, they stink a lot. they always stink. And I think Minnesota, they're still fighting for a playoff spot despite 5-6. I think they come out firing. Unfortunately, it'll be the 11th loss of the year. 11-1 then will be the record. And who knows? They could go winless the entire year. We'll have to see what happens there with Detroit. Sucks that they're at home, too, that they got to lose that game. As we go to New York and Miami, New York Football Giants 4-7, Miami at 5-7. All of a sudden, the Dolphins, after losing 7 straight, have now won 4 straight and are right there on the cusp of the playoffs in the AFC. Do you think the Dolphins can keep up this hot streak, or do the Giants upset them?
I think I'm going to go with the Dolphins on this one, especially since they are on a winning streak. And the Giants are just, they're from New York.
Yeah, we got a little Massachusetts thing. You can't like anything from New York. I think the Giants are too much of a mess. Plus, the Dolphins with Tua Tagovailoa, he's getting back into the groove of things after being hurt. They look good. And I like the Dolphins in this one. But speaking of New York, the other New York team, the Jets, they're at home at 3-8, hosting the Philadelphia Eagles at 5-7. Again, Eagles still with playoff chances. They dropped the game last week to the Giants. Do they make it back-to-back losses against the New York teams?
Nope. I think that the Eagles will definitely surpass.
Just for a hatred of the Jets, or are they pretty good?
I mean, the Jets are just historically not great. They're really just not. And I mean, Philadelphia, I don't follow football super duper close. I don't watch every game every week, but I mean, they did win the Super Bowl a few years ago.
That is true.
So, and like, yeah, no, they're not going to lose twice in a row.
Yeah, I think for the Jets, as you said, they're the Jets, and I mean they just barely squeaked by Houston, who's even a worse team, who we'll talk about next. But I think Philly, the offense looks they'll get back in sync. I think Jalen Hurts is going to have a good game against the Jets. I'll take Philly on that one. As then we go to the Indianapolis Colts, former rival of the Patriots, at 6-6, taking on the aforementioned Houston team at 2-9. Houston's at home. Colts still fighting for that playoff spot. I said earlier they are a good team. This should be an easy win. But let's see what you think, Alex, between Indianapolis and Houston.
I actually was a Colts fan as a kid because I was obsessed with horses. So I'm going to go with the Colts. Also, clearly they are a better win. Like they're winning more than the Texans are.
6-6 versus 2-9 should give you the obvious right there. And I totally forgot you were a big horse person. So let me see. Yeah, we got Denver later. We'll talk about them a little later. I agree. Indianapolis should win this game. It'd be surprising if Houston pulls off the upset. I'm going to go with the Colts. I'm going to ride with you right there. I pick Indianapolis to this one. As we go to Washington and Las Vegas, the football team right there at 5-6. Meanwhile, the Raiders at 6-5. Sounds like a real 50-50 matchup. Both teams really are trying to solidify their spot in their conference. What do you think between Washington and Las Vegas?
Yeah, I feel like this is a tough one. This one's really rough especially because they're pretty closely matched in terms of wins and losses. I'm gonna have to go with Las Vegas.
All right, you're gambling in the city of gambling. I like that. Yeah, of course. I think Vegas has really surprised me with all of the mess. I don't know if you've heard, but it's John Gruden with the emails, Henry Ruggs with the fatal crash and the DUI. They've gone through so much, and yet here they are still at 6-5. I just think Washington's rolling too much. I think on the road they go into Vegas, and I think this is going to be an upset for Washington. I think they're a team built on confidence. So that's why I think Washington will win this one. I think another team that needs confidence is LA, though. The LA Rams at 7-4 host the 2-9 Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, let me tell you, I'm going to make this pick really quick. If the Rams don't win this game, that would be a shame. At 2-9, they're 7-4. That would be a big upset. What do you think? Is there an upset? Is Jacksonville going to win this one, or is it going to be LA?
Jacksonville will not be winning. They will not. There's no way. LA Rams.
Yeah, this don't even that need that much time on it. It should be LA wide and away. As then we go to Baltimore and Pittsburgh. This one's going to be a little bit more tough. AFC North, Baltimore, I arguably think best team in the AFC. They travel to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's not looking that great at 5-1. What do you think between the 8-3 Ravens and the 5-1 Steelers?
I feel like I'll go with the Ravens. I feel like in the past, they've been, like you said, they've been really good. I feel like they just haven't hit the top always. So I feel like if there's a year to do it, this might be it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there that, if you remember, they won the Super Bowl in 2013. That's like the highest they went, but Joe Flacco was their quarterback. I agree. This should be an easy win, but you never know with these kind of divisional games within the division. Baltimore and Pittsburgh always play each other tough. It could go either way, but I think I agree with you that Baltimore should win this one pretty easily, looking at record wise. As then we go to San Francisco and Seattle. I talked about Seattle in our earlier segment. They look like a mess right now at 3-8. Of course, you remember Seattle in the Super Bowl against the Patriots. Russell Wilson, that Seattle team just haven't looked the same since that terrible interception, that terrible play call. What can San Francisco do at 6-5? Can they beat them?
Based on the fact that you're saying they're a mess, absolutely. I do love their rooms. If they were doing just a little better, I'd probably pick them. But no, we won't go with them today.
Yeah, San Francisco, they look good. Seattle, as I said, they're a mess. I think the 49ers win this one on the road. As then we go to the Sunday night game between the Broncos and the Chiefs. I said Denver earlier. They're the Broncos. They're horses, but they have to go on the road to Kansas City, 7-4. Are you going to ride with your horses, or does Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs win this one?
I'm feeling like the Chiefs for this one. I don't know what
you're going against the horses.
I know what's wrong with me, right?
You picked a horse. You picked the Colts, so it's not all bad. So you've got your horses there. I think the horse, pun intended, should be Kansas City on this one. They look good. They're at home. Plus Denver's it's hard to get a read on them. So I'll pick Kansas City on that one. Yeah. And then we go to the Monday night game. This has got a big local impact. Patriots at Bills. AFC East on the line. Pats at 8-4 have won 6 straight. Buffalo coming off a big Thanksgiving win against New Orleans last Thursday. They've had 11 days to prepare. What do you think between the homegrown Pats and the Buffalo Bills?
Yikes. Based on what you just said, Bills have had a break. Pats haven't. But the Pats are coming on this really great winning streak. I'm going to go with the Patriots because if I didn't, I'd feel awful about myself. But the Bills seem like they could pull through. Possibly.
I think this is going to be the game of the week. And of course, if you're born in Massachusetts, if you're not a Patriots fan, that's shocking. I bet you a lot of people at University of Illinois don't like that you're a Pats fan. They're probably like, oh, you're winning so much. I think this is going to be close, and I hate to go against them, but I think just at home, the Bills having all that prep, I think that's the advantage. And unfortunately, the win streak stops at 6. So I'm going to go, unfortunately, with the Bills to win this one. But I'll be happy if they lose, though. I'll be happy if the Patriots win. But just instinctually, I feel like there's something there that says Buffalo, Buffalo, Buffalo. So that does it. That does it for our picks. Alex, thanks for making those picks. For those that can check out your business, Modern Nature, hair, skin, wellness, where can people go to buy these products, or how can they follow you?
Awesome. So my Instagram is at PookieHead, which is POOKIHEAD. It's been that. It's never going to change. And there is a link in my bio on my Instagram in which you can find my website. The products are great because I will personally match you with what I think is best for you. So there's a place where you can take a hair skincare quiz, or you can always just message me on Instagram.
Long live PookieHead. That's never going to change. Alex Shaffer, thank you so much for taking the time out, making these picks. Good luck on your NFL picks.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Special thanks again to Alex Shaffer. Great to see her take some time out to make some picks. But speaking of football, we move to the college game as the regular season is wrapping up. We've got conference championships being decided this weekend, but that's not even the biggest headline coming out of college football. It's all these head coaching changes that people are talking about. You got Lincoln Riley leaving Oklahoma for USC, and you got Brian Kelly leaving the Irish, where he's been for 13 or 14 years, to go to LSU. Now, let's start with Lincoln Riley, because he said it over and over in press conferences. I'm not leaving Oklahoma. I'm not leaving Oklahoma. All of a sudden, boom, he goes to USC. And you know why? The almighty dollar, okay? This is a guy probably in the last 10 years or so, maybe outside of Nick Saban, has been the most successful and consistent head coach, one of the more consistent, successful head coaches in college football. You could put him third behind Nick Saban and Dabo Swinney. After that, Lincoln Riley is the best. But listen to what USC and the Trojans and the boosters are doing for Lincoln Riley. His contract could be worth $110 million. USC is going to buy both his Norman homes, and they're going to buy him a home in LA for $6 million, and his family gets to use their private jet whenever they want, 24/7. Okay. Not even an idiot would say no to that if you got that kind of money being thrown at you. And honestly, looking at Lincoln Riley, okay, Oklahoma is a lot different than USC. Oklahoma, you are very offensive centric. We've heard Lincoln Riley as the quarterback whisperer or something like that. And we're seeing it where one of the top recruits is joining Riley to USC after decommitting from Oklahoma. But West Coast football is a lot different than Oklahoma football. Okay. You put up points in Oklahoma and you don't play defense. USC, you got to have both things working. Okay. That's why you see in Big 12 games like 50-45 or something like that. Okay. Lincoln Riley has to do, he's got to do it on the field. If he doesn't, this is a total waste. It's a total waste. Does USC get back to the promised land immediately? Probably not. Probably not. It's going to take a couple of years. But I mean, if we're seeing Chip Kelly win with UCLA, I mean, Lincoln Riley can do it for USC. So I want to see what happens on the field come the 2022 season if Lincoln Riley can actually do this. Similar, though, to Brian Kelly. The almighty dollar speaks, and he's looking for opportunities. Okay, 10 years, $95 million. And I got to tell you, this was a jaw dropper for me. I look at the notification on my phone and my jaw literally drops because Brian Kelly has been the most successful coach in Notre Dame college football history. Okay. He's been there, like I said, 13, 14 years. He just surpassed the most wins for the Irish. And now here he is saying the best chance to win a national championship is at LSU. Let's just keep in mind, LSU is in the SEC. You got to contend with Georgia, Alabama, Florida, Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, Texas, and Oklahoma are going to join soon. Okay. The best chance to win a national championship is at LSU. No, your best chance was at Notre Dame, but you blew it. You blew it every time you've gone to the college football playoff and you've got to the national championship. Alabama's kicking your butt. Clemson's kicking your butt. Okay. Do I agree with the move? Maybe. But again, I've got to see it on the field. How does football in the South at LSU compare to football at Notre Dame? Two very different styles. I have no doubt Brian Kelly can at least get LSU to maybe over 500. Back to the national championship like Coach O, probably not, because you still got Alabama, you still got Georgia, and all those teams I just mentioned. But I mean, Brian Kelly, just what I'm hearing about, this is an opportunity for him. I don't fault him for wanting to take that chance at LSU. But I mean, in hearing what he did, he went to a players meeting that only lasted like 11 minutes. He sent out a text message and didn't even offer questions. It probably could have been handled a lot better. But of course, those are the headlines off the field. Let's talk about what's going on the field. And that is the conference championships leading to who will make that Final Four playoff. And right now, the top six goes Georgia, Michigan, Alabama, Cincinnati. Those would be the four who qualify. And then you've got Oklahoma State and Notre Dame on the outside looking in. Now, my first question with these rankings is, why is Notre Dame still number 6 and Oklahoma State? Okay. Oklahoma State, if they win, then they're essentially going to get in because, well, let me just break it down like this. Notre Dame is getting whipped for Brian Kelly leaving. Brian Kelly's leaving. Okay. And Notre Dame's got no more games. So basically the fate is in everyone else's hands. There are a lot of playoff scenarios that I'm looking at like this. If Georgia wins the SEC championship, Alabama's done. If Alabama wins the SEC championship, both of them will get in. Okay. They'll probably put Michigan number 1, probably Alabama 2, and maybe Georgia sits at 3 or 4, something like that. But sticking with the SEC championship, I think, I would favor Georgia slightly just because you have to look at last week and what a game it was between Alabama and Auburn in the Iron Bowl. I mean, that 4 overtime game was incredible to watch. And I feel like Georgia's a slight favorite just because the energy for the Crimson Tide was spent last week in really keeping their season alive. So that's sort of where I favor Georgia. Georgia hasn't really had to squeak out as many games as Alabama had. They just barely beat Florida along with the Iron Bowl last week. Georgia, though, does have to shut down Bryce Young, okay? They've got to continue to be one of those top teams in the nation. You look at them, they're basically top 3 in every single category, including opponents' points per game and yards per game. That's why I sort of favor Georgia slightly, is just the energy from Alabama was wasted last week, and who knows what Georgia is going to do for this upcoming week. But going from the SEC to Big Ten championship, do or die for Michigan, because they finally got the monkey off their back. Jim Harbaugh got the monkey off when he beat Ohio State in the Big House last week. And I feel like there's a new confidence for the Big Blue after fighting off those kind of demons. It is a tough matchup, though, against Iowa. You look at what Iowa did last week against Nebraska, making that comeback. And obviously, I will be rooting for them because of a family connection. My uncle is good friends with head coach Kirk Ferentz, so I'll definitely be rooting for them. I think in a favorable matchup, Michigan has to score early and often, because you have to basically play a full 60 minutes against this Hawkeye team. You saw it against Nebraska. They got down, I forget what it was, like maybe 21-6 or something like that. And then here comes Iowa just putting up points. They're blocking punts and stuff like that. That's where I see Michigan having to win this game, is just continuing to score early, get those points against Iowa early on. You've got to have probably a 3-possession lead at halftime in order to say, you know what, I feel comfortable against this Iowa team, because they're a feisty group. This was an Iowa team that was number 2 in the nation at one point. So you got to watch out there. And then in the Big 12 championship, because first off, I'm going to ignore the AAC, because I think Cincinnati is going to win that and they're going to get into the playoffs. Just like I said, they stay undefeated, they get in. The Big 12 championship, this is going to vault Oklahoma State into the playoff if they can win, okay? If the Cowboys win, they're in. But Baylor's a very tough team that I think is going to make it a close, high-scoring affair between these two. Because really, I don't even think Oklahoma State should be at number 5 anyway. It should be Notre Dame at number 5. And then the Irish would get in if Alabama loses. That's how I sort of see the picture going at right now when you look at the top 6. But Oklahoma State, yeah, they beat Oklahoma, but Baylor is so tough. I don't really have any faith in Oklahoma State right now in pulling off a victory. And even if they do, I would still favor the Irish to get in. So there's a lot that can go on in college football right now, but there's a reason that's called Conference Championship Saturday. Once those conference championships are over, we will officially know the 4 teams who will be making it to the college football playoff. Now, in moving on, obviously the big sports story has been the MLB going into a lockout. It's official. It was official at midnight last night. MLB and the Players Union, they're locked out, and essentially they've got a couple of months to get this right. They've got until, I would say, February 12th, which is when pitchers and catchers normally report for most teams. And then once you hit March, then it gets closer and closer. So hopefully there's motivation for the MLB to get this done and to end this lockout. But before then, there were a ton of deals flying off the table in MLB free agency. And there's a couple of teams that I really wanted to talk about. The first one being the New York Mets. And again, they're showing themselves to be wanting to spend. Okay. The big prize obviously was Max Scherzer that they got. 3 years, $130 million deal. Okay. And when you look at him paired up with Jacob deGrom, maybe the deadliest 1-2 punch in the major leagues right now. If you've got Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom, 2 of maybe the best pitchers in the last 3 or 4 years. Okay. The only problem I see is just health. I mean, when you listen to Max Scherzer last, he was saying, oh, my arm was essentially dead. Jacob deGrom, he was shut down with arm issues. And you also got to remember, Max Scherzer's 37. Okay. Jacob deGrom, he's had multiple arm problems. So are they going to be healthy enough Okay. That's why I think the Mets, because pitching wasn't their problem. It wasn't really the biggest area to address because their offense was. I mean, they had the ninth best ERA in the MLBs, but their offense was horrible. Okay. You didn't have anyone hitting, over 300 right now, which is what the elite teams have. And I thought Javi Baez was going to be the difference, but clearly it's not. That's why you add a guy like Starling Marte, who hit over 300. You shore up third base with Eduardo Escobar, Marcana from Oakland. Okay. I think the Mets they're making good moves, but I'm not fully sold on them just yet because, like I said, their two best starting pitchers that they have are dealing with arm issues. And we found out last year with the Mets that when Jacob deGrom isn't in the rotation, this team goes nowhere, absolutely nowhere. Did they get better on offense? Yes. Would I call them the NL East favorites right now? It depends on what Atlanta does because Freddie Freeman's still on the market. He could re-sign with Atlanta. Obviously, Atlanta are the defending champs. I see them as a wild card team at best right now. That would be my prediction right now for the New York Mets, is because their top two pitchers are dealing with health issues. You've got a steady bullpen, but your offense has to get better. Okay. So that's guys like Brandon Nimmo, Pete Alonso. All those guys have to hit the ball better, 10 times better. Otherwise, it's going to be another putrid year for the New York Mets. But maybe the next team that's spending just as crazy as the Mets are the Texas Rangers. Okay. They've already shored up their middle infield by committing $500 million to two guys, Marcus Semien at second base and Corey Seager at shortstop. Okay. Semien's got 7 years, $175 million on his deal. Corey Seager, 10 years, $325 million. Okay. You got to keep in mind, this team had the third worst record in the major leagues last year and haven't finished above 500 when they had the best record in the American League in 2017. Okay. Their run differential in 2021 was minus 190. Minus 190. Okay. Maybe they're not going to be the worst team in the American League anymore or close to that because I think it still goes to the Orioles, but they're not going to get above 500. They're not going to get above 500. This team from top to bottom has been bad. And I just mean bad. Does Marcus Semien and Corey Seager shore that up? No, it doesn't. Because honestly, I can't even name one other person from the Texas Rangers on that team. I can't. They traded Joey Gallo, who we're finding out is actually a good move because he just strikes out all the time. I don't see Texas, their plan. I don't understand what the Rangers are trying to do in signing. They got, I think, maybe two of the top 10 best players on the market in Semien and Seager, but they're not going to turn this thing around. They're not. Okay. Defensively, they're going to get better. And maybe offensively, they go from a minus 190 to maybe in the double digits instead of the triple digits. I just don't understand what Texas is doing, just throwing out this kind of money and not divvying it up to other areas. Maybe they have a young team that no one really knows about. We'll just have to see if the Rangers can get back onto the field and maybe get back that success. But speaking of a young team getting success, the Seattle Mariners, okay, I think they've got to be the biggest dark horse. If there's a 2022 season, they've got to be the biggest dark horse heading into 2022.